Hey everyone! It's great to be back with you all again. After the original Splatterhouse made waves in the US, Europe, and Japan, it was only natural that we'd be seeing more of it in one form or another. But before Splatterhouse 2 and 3 would come to the Sega Genesis and Mega Drive, one other spin-off made its debut less than a year later. A Famicom game by the name of Splatterhouse Wanpaku Graffiti. Instead of the regular focus on blood and gore that we'd see from the mainline series, this game would tone all of that down and make the characters look like cute chibi versions of themselves. Could such a thing live up to the Splatterhouse name? You may just be surprised. Let's check it out! Developed by Now Production, published by Namco, and released for the Nintendo Famicom in July of 1989, Splatterhouse Wanpaku Graffiti is a 2D action platformer spin-off to the main Splatterhouse games, and the first Splatterhouse game to get a home release, as the TurboGrafx 16 version of the original wouldn't come out until the following year. It still features Rick, Jennifer, and the Terror Mask, but not in the way you may be familiar with. So, what's going on here exactly? For starters, the game's setup is quite different from the one in the original. Here, the game begins with Rick, the main character, dead, and Jennifer crying over his gravestone. A bolt of lightning hits the grave and brings Rick back to life, with the Terror Mask already on his face. Before they can celebrate, another bolt of lightning strikes the neighboring grave, this time bringing an enemy called the Pumpkin King back to life. He immediately kidnaps Jennifer, leaving Rick to go and save her. Foregoing a lot of the beat-em-up elements of the original, Wanpaku Graffiti focuses more on action and platforming, making the whole experience feel very different, on top of the change in atmosphere. Rick now wields an axe, and moves much faster than the Rick in the original, being able to jump around and dodge attacks with ease, which is good, because he has quite a bit of them coming his way. The game has a total of 7 stages, each with some hilarious broken English to go with its taglines. Some of my favorites include, "Ghost comes here with a ray," and my personal favorite, "Be garbage of cesspool, ha ha ha." What you're looking at here is essentially a parody game. Just like Kid Dracula did for Castlevania, Wanpaku Graffiti would do for the original Splatterhouse, taking away the gore and dark atmosphere and replacing it with something more silly and lighthearted. It's funny to think about. Now Production developed this game in 1989, a year after the original Splatterhouse, and would then go on to develop Splatterhouse 2 and 3 a few years later. That's quite a mantle to pick up. The game's controls are simple enough. You move left and right with the ability to jump and use the attack button to slash with an axe, both on the ground and midair. And it all works great, as Rick has very fluid movement, making this title feel far less confining than the original. His reach with the axe is also slightly longer than the original's use of his fists and feet. Although there is no host of weapons for Rick to pick up throughout the game like in the original, he does at least come across a few shotguns, which more than make up for this. And each stage certainly stands out in its own unique ways, while remaining somewhat faithful to the main premise of the original game. This game also manages to do its own thing simultaneously. While both titles made references to movies like Friday the 13th and Evil Dead 2, this one manages to make a lot of its own horror references when it comes to boss fights, like Alien, where these facehugger-like enemies shoot out of a woman's stomach, The Fly, where a man and a fly get mixed together in a matter transporter, and even The Exorcist, where this young girl's head spins around before floating up in the air to fight you. And of course, the game also manages to reference Michael Jackson's Thriller. Yes, seriously. There are also references to the first Splatterhouse sprinkled in as well, such as the sewer platforming segments or the chapel. Some of the same enemies from the first game also mark their return in this one. But it's not just about action and platforming. The game also has an RPG element to it as well. Every enemy that you hit goes toward a meter in the top left corner. Once filled up, it increases the size of your health bar and raises the amount of enemies you need to take out for the next level. And it's surprisingly well balanced. After playing through the game multiple times, I would always reach the max level just before the final stage, no matter what I was doing. It made the whole thing feel very fluid and straightforward in its progression. Even after dying, the game still keeps track of all your experience and allows you to keep adding to it so long as you haven't reached the point of getting a game over. Very convenient and very welcome. While I wouldn't exactly call the game easy, I would say it's one of the easier titles in the Splatterhouse franchise, and far from unfair. Unlike the mainline trilogy, which would penalize you for just about any kind of mistake, Wanpaku Graffiti gives you a surprising amount of breathing room between the fluid movement and increasingly large health bar. Unlike the mainline trilogy, which would keep me on my toes and force me to concentrate at all times, I found this title to be much better for simply kicking back and being able to enjoy. And after playing those 3 mainline games, I found this little breather to be more than welcome. As I said before, I don't believe any of this makes the game quote-unquote easy, however. There are still multiple segments that can be quite difficult if you don't have your movement down pat. The rooms with books or silverware coming at you from every direction certainly takes some practice to get the hang of, and the swarms of enemies you come across in certain rooms really can get the better of you if you're not careful. And then of course there's the boss fights. While a lot of these fights have pretty straightforward methods of winning, they can start to feel a little repetitive due to the tactics being the same throughout the entire fight, turning the whole thing into more of a test of stamina than anything else. It's not a big deal, but if you go in expecting bosses with multiple forms, you may come out disappointed. In fact, the fight with the green rat in the middle of stage 2 may have been one of the hardest fights of the entire game to me, due to the pattern memorization, the speed that the smaller rats come at you with, and the small margin of error since you get knocked back by every single hit. I love the little touches thrown in to make the game feel more unique and humorous, such as this moment when a bucket can fall on your head and actually stay there for the remainder of the stage. Or right before the final boss fight, when pressing up by this soda machine will give you a drink to restore your health with. Little moments like these showcase just how much love and care was really put into this project, and you could clearly tell that the team behind it was having some fun too. Even if you were to take out all of the little personal touches I mentioned before, the gameplay is still solid enough to make the game stand out on its own. Now let's discuss the game's plot and ending. That's right, we're delving into spoiler territory once again. Obviously, the game's main story is about as simple as it gets. Jennifer is kidnapped by the Pumpkin King, and Rick has to fight his way through hordes of enemies and bosses to go save her. We get horror movie references abound, etc. But the ending has a bit of a twist to it that even I didn't see coming the first time I played it. After finally reaching the Pumpkin King, Rick goes into quite a long battle with it, forcing you to dodge little blasts when it bounces around and move away quickly after hitting it so you don't get caught in its path as it moves all around the screen. Once he finally goes down, Jennifer is saved, and that's a wrap? Yes, as a funny change of pace, you now see that this game and the entirety of its events were all part of a movie being filmed. Kind of a funny way to end things, but hey, at least it explains all those movie references we kept seeing. But there's a little more to it all if you know where to look. Although the game has one main ending sequence, there are 2 secret endings that can be unlocked by finding and picking up crystal balls, of which the game has 2. In order to locate these, you have to find and get through 2 secret stages that the game has hiding away. The first has you climb your way up a large Japanese tower, while the other has you climbing up the inside of an Egyptian pyramid. Both of these levels are very different from the ones in the rest of the game, and once again show off a sillier side that no other entry in the franchise could get away with. After obtaining both of these, the ending showcases 2 images with writing under them. The first has an image of Rick and Jennifer together, translating to, "The 2 are happy." But the second shows the 2 walking into the West Mansion from the first game, with the caption translating to, "Until Tragedy Strikes." These images led many to question if this ending makes Wanpaku Graffiti a prequel game, implying that the image speaks of the terror that would come to Rick and Jennifer in the first game. And I can certainly see what those people are saying, even though I don't believe this has ever been confirmed officially before. Still, I enjoyed the journey to get there, and the wacky levels it took to get us to that point. I have to say, I didn't know exactly what to expect when I first saw the title and its more unique take on the franchise, but I found myself absolutely loving this one from beginning to end. The controls are fast and responsive, and each stage left me smiling all the way through. Even without prior knowledge of the original Splatterhouse or any of its sequels, this game stands alone as something that just about anyone with a love of action platformers can appreciate. I truly miss the days when parody games such as this one were more of a norm, and playing this brought me right back to that era once again. This is yet another one of those underrated gems of the Famicom that deserved a fair chance in the US, but sadly never got one. I only hope this video inspires you to find a way to play it yourself, as I'm sure you'll find this one to be just as funny and charming as I did. If you're in the mood for something spooky but not scary, and with a bit of humor sprinkled on top, then you owe it to yourself to give this one a go. As you can see, I was pleasantly surprised by Wanpaku Graffiti. Not only is this a great little addition to the Splatterhouse series, but it actually stands as a perfectly fun title on its own, without you even having to play the other games to have fun with it, or fear that you may be missing out if you don't. Your movement is fast and fluid, the difficulty is fair and far less unforgiving than most entries in the series, the experience system is well made and keeps you occupied while you progress, the horror movie references are hilarious, as they are creative, and the overall fun factor of this one is through the roof. This is yet another one of those hidden gems from the Famicom library that I hope everyone can track down and play. Grab this one immediately if you can. And that's going to do it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. Have you played this game before yourself? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're feeling really generous, please consider supporting my Patreon, where awesome people like Brandon, Cielo, Erica, and Jedi Dude all help to keep this channel going. And with this video, that's 4 Splatterhouse titles down and 1 to go. The 2010 Splatterhouse remake received mixed to negative reception when it came out, with a sizable amount of fans still defending it. Was it truly as bad as the critical reception made it out to be? You've got to stay tuned and see. Until next time.